I would like to start, if you don't mind. We are a bit delayed in beginning, and we'll try and see. We were supposed to start at 10:30. It's 4 minutes past 11, and I'd really like to start. We have a large array and a very, I will say, a very good number of speakers who we want to hear from, learn from, and I think they will make an impact on what we plan to do. I will not make my welcome remarks very long. I'll just be very short and brief in order to give more time to the speakers. So I just want to say that welcome to this session. This is the opening plenary session. And we will be joined later on by the Honorable Advisor. But in the meantime, we will begin and start. We have a keynote presentation, which we will have the keynote presentation followed by a very distinguished list of discussants, who I will call one by one. I would humbly request, if you all don't mind, to limit your points and discussions to within 5 minutes is possible. I also want to beg your indulgence that when I was first, the mail came to me, it was up to a much earlier time. So I have another engagement exactly at 2. So because I have to leave exactly at 2, I may not leave at 2, I have to leave at 1 to reach my next appointment at 2. I would beg your indulgence, and if the discussion is not ended, I will kindly request Fahmida from CPD as the Executive Director to take over the chair if we don't finish in time. If I don't finish in time, so I would humbly request Fahmida to take over. And with those words, it's important, I think, I'll just say a few words that is very important, I think, that we discuss. I know there's a lot of ennui and a lot of thing with the COP. We just go to every COP. This is the 30th COP. And we make promises and nothing happens. It's just talk and nothing ever happens. But I think the time, as we have heard and we all know, it's urgent that we make something happen. I think it's important that we don't look only in terms of our own area of work or expertise, that we look at it in the holistic manner, not only just in terms of protecting the environment in the natural resources, but also in the energy sector, which is extremely important. We have to look at the transport sector. We have to look at the development sector, and development in all its aspects, both in terms of people and their well-being and their quality of life, but also development in terms of the economic and infrastructure growth, which does not impact negatively. It doesn't have to be that economic growth does not have to be at crossroads and against environmental sustainability. So I think this COP30, those who would be going, it's very crucial. I would like to stress that it's extremely important that countries like ours make a noise and make our voices and our issues felt. It has to go beyond just whether we can get financing for our projects. It has to be looked at in terms of the whole earth and us being at the receiving end as victims of others' pollution, but also in terms of looking at ourselves internally at what it can we do. What can we do? This is an international conference. We have 2 people who will be with us, I think, on Zoom. And I hope they have already joined us and that they would be able to keep their talk within 5 minutes. And I'll also just say that we need to start thinking, I believe very strongly, in a regional approach. It's very crucial that we as a region who host more than a quarter of the world's population, and we are host to a lot of natural resources that are fast being depleted. So we need to make our presence felt, and I hope this COP30 is a wake-up call for everybody and for us to make our presence felt. With those words, and without much ado, I would like to ask Mr. Fakhruddin Al-Kabir, who's the Senior Research Associate at Center for Policy Dialogue, to give the keynote presentation. I know you've been given 15 minutes. Try and stay within that, and if it's shorter, it'll be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues and all other present here and all protocol observers. As we gather here today on a pivotal moment in our shared climate journey, the urgency of global climate action has never been great. Yet the path forward demands more than action. It requires alignment and action. Climate change is no longer a looming threat. It is a present reality affecting every nation and region. Particularly, developing countries remain disproportionately vulnerable to the impacts of climate change due to limited resilience and challenging socio-economic conditions. Bangladesh, like many other developing countries, is already facing these challenges and realities. And thus, building robust climate resilience is not just a necessity, it is an urgent priority for coming decades. Yet, no country can achieve climate goals in isolation. In a world shaped by diverse economies, political systems, and development agendas, aligning national interest with global climate commitments is both a complex challenge and a vital opportunity. We must pursue strategies that bridge national priorities with global goals because a sustainable future depends on a collective action. We are here today to discuss the potential countries and strategies that will help make our ambition into climate action. And if you look at the background, Bangladesh is among the world's most climate vulnerable countries, often cited as a ground zero of the climate crisis, even before its birth, as in 1970, the Bhola cyclone that took place in the country, and it cost more than 300,000 to 500,000 millions of thousands of people's lives. Not only that, and in 2022, Bangladesh is contributed only 0.3% of global carbon emission and 0.5% of total global GHG emission. Yet the country ranks 9th in the Global Climate Risk Index 2024. Rising sea levels, frequent cyclones, heat stress, salinity intrusion, and flooding pose existence threat lives and livelihoods and the ecosystem. On average, tropical cyclone cost Bangladesh about $1 billion annually. By 2050, 1/3 of agricultural GDP may be lost due to climate variability and extreme events. It is worth noting that since we are having a very significant impact on agriculture, it is estimated that by 2050, 13.3 million people will be internal climate migrant due to losing their livelihoods in the agricultural sector. Against this background, the upcoming COP30 in Belém, Brazil, which will start on 10th of November and scheduled to end on 21st November, will be pivotal for Bangladesh as it is seeks stronger global commitments on adaptation finance, renewable energy support, and loss and damage financing. Before moving forward, we may look at Bangladesh's climate profile a little bit. As we can see, over the times, we see that the surface air temperature and the average annual mean temperature trends are increasing. And that has also the consequences. As we can see from the Bangladesh disaster-related statistics, every year the country is affected by flood and cyclones. the percentage distribution shows that the 54.69% of the households affected by flood every year, and also the second was the cyclone. And if I look at the data, and we have analyzed the data from 1980 to 2024, and we see that on an average every year, 24% of the country's land inundated during the monsoon season, and it has also the economic cost as well. Then look at the GHG emission scenario of the Bangladesh. Since we are facing the impact of climate change and how much we are contributing to the global GHG emission and how much we are responsible for that. In 2022, Bangladesh emitted 224.35 million tons of GHG emission, accounting for only 0.51% of global emission. If you look at the trend of the data, it's slowly increasing over the time since our GDP is also increasing. But however, if you look at the carbon intensity to GDP, it is also decreasing. So now we are actually looking at disaggregated data. That energy sector is the highest contributing sector for GHG emission, and then we have other sector like manufacturing, construction, industrial process, and transportation. So this is the climate profile of the Bangladesh so far. So as we can see, now we can look at some of the national climate strategies. Since 1990, Bangladesh started to take initiative on environment-related measures. So initially, our focus was to protect the environment from the pollution, and that's we first formulated our environmental policy in 1993. But then we should not forget what happened in 1998, the devastating flood, and that inundated 68% of country's land, and then followed by another devastating flood in 2004 that also inundated 61% of country's land, and it was prolonged, and it had impact on the agriculture, livelihoods, and many other sectors. Given that climate impacts are increasing and it is frequent, the government has taken various initiatives over time. Now I am looking at some of the initiatives very shortly so that we can remember our strategies and planning. So the National Adaptation Program of Action, which was first formulated in 2005, it identifies immediate and urgent climate change adaptation needs, prioritizing actions to protect vulnerable communities from issues like floods, salinity, and droughts. And right after that, in 2009, Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan was formulated. This is a government initiative, and that focusing on the both adaptation and mitigation. It identifies 6 thematic areas that are food security, social protection and health, comprehensive disaster management, infrastructure, research and knowledge management, mitigation and low carbon development, and capacity building for the institutions. And it is worth noting that every year since 2018, we are allotting climate budget, we are publishing climate related budget, and these are under 6 thematic areas. But given the current condition, these 6 thematic areas are not enough, and I think the revised BCCSP is considering 11 thematic areas. Then we have our long-term planning BDP 2100, Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100. It's a long-term integrated strategic plan for Bangladesh's water and land management to build resilience against climate change and natural disaster. It was then formulated in 2018, but in recent times, since the elevation of sea level, as you can see, this only focused on the delta system, but due to the elevation of the sea, and our embankment elevation requires more revision. And then in 2022, before going to the COP, Bangladesh has submitted its National Adaptation Plan to build a climate resilient nation by integrating adaptation into all sectors through a whole of government approach. But to implement this climate national adaptation plan requires a combined effort from private and public and also international commitments. Then in 2024, integrating the gender-related issues into climate actions, as we know that the women are the most vulnerable due to the climate change related issues and the socio-economic conditions in Bangladesh. And Bangladesh has updated its climate change gender action plan in 2024. And in recent times, as we know that we have submitted our NDC 3 to the UNFCCC, where we have outlined our conditional and unconditional commitments to reduce the carbon emission from our various sectors. So look at the national priorities. What are our adaptation priorities? Agriculture comes to the first, because we need to look at the climate resilient crops and also the seeds because of the saline intrusion and flood every year. And then we have to manage the water resources, addressing climate-induced health risks. Every year we see that the vector-borne disease like dengue, malaria, those numbers are increasing and people are getting sick, and also that takes a toll on our lives as well. And also we have done excellent job in developing early warning system, but then again, given the coming decades, we need to continue this initiative. Coastal protection infrastructure system is also one of our priorities, because due to the elevation of sea level, we need to rebuild our coastal embankment. Also it's need to be rebuilt and redesigned. And also another ecosystem, wetlands, since Bangladesh is a riverine country and we have lots of rivers and it's like a net and all over there, so we need to conserve those ecosystem, wetlands and biodiversity. At the same time, we have some cross-cutting issues as well, like institutional capacity building, gender consideration into climate adaptation planning and implementation, raising awareness about climate change. And along with the adaptation priorities, we have some mitigation strategies for Bangladesh, since we have a growing industry and manufacturing sectors. So we have unconditional and conditional targets, and the strategy are focusing on enhancing energy efficiency, increasing the share of renewable energy resources, promotion of sustainable transport system and fuel efficiency technologies, implementation of cleaner production technologies and waste minimization practices, adoption of climate-smart agriculture practice to reduce emissions from the agriculture, and improvement in waste management practices to minimize methane emissions. So as I have outlined the government adaptation priorities and the mitigation and initiatives, now look at the NDC 3 and what we have placed this year from the coming year. As we know that the previous year's NDC, first NDC and NDC 2, that was the base year in 2012, but this year we have changed the base year to 2022. When we have analyzed the data, we can see that power sector is the most contributing to the global emission, as 48.81% of total emission power sector is responsible. But in the power sector, energy use in manufacturing industry, if you look at the base year data and the business as usual data by 2035, we see a huge jump. There will be a plus 16.56% change. If you look at the absolute value, like currently it is emitting 23.83% million ton of carbon emission, and by 2035, if you go without taking any initiative as a business as usual scenario, it will emit 180.82, 356.56% of change. So, and also, so what is our targets? What is our conditional and unconditional targets? As we can see, power sector gets the most attention. That's we have set a target, 28% of reduction from the power sector, both combined and conditional and unconditional. And then second comes energy use in agriculture, and third comes energy use in manufacturing industries. Given the data and analysis earlier slides, as you can see here, maybe we could consider a little bit more ambition, set more ambition in the energy use in manufacturing industry. But there is also problem, since manufacturing industry is one of the driver of our economy, and we earn much foreign currency from the manufacturing sector. So if we if we set higher ambition, then we need to ensure that whether we are ready for this carbon transition to the cleaner production system. Otherwise, it may have impact on our employment system. So now look at the GHG emission projection scenario. If we do nothing, if we go as a business as usual scenario, so we will emit 418.40 million ton of equivalent carbon emission by 2035. With our own effort, national effort, what we have right now, we can reduce 26.74 million ton of carbon emission, which is 6.39% of total emission as compared to business as usual scenario. If we get the conditional or support from the international community and other technical related support, then we can reduce up to 13.92% of emission compared to the business as usual scenario. Now, we can have a look, a little bit overview of the COP30 and what are the discussion issues this year's COP30 in Belém, Brazil. So we have some strategic aims of COP30 and action agenda. The strategic aims of COP30 are to accelerate action on the outcomes of past COPs and the Paris agreements, particularly by finalizing the rules of a global carbon market and establishing the Belém action mechanism for just transition. There is also central aim is to scale implementation through existing initiatives by connecting governments with organizations already delivering solutions. Then key negotiating issues of COP30 is to finalize the nationally determined contribution submitted by the countries to reduce the GHG emission and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Global goal on adaptation are to develop indicators to measure track progress on adapting to climate change impacts will be a major focus. And then another major focus will be on climate financing that will focus on scaling up financial support. We need the climate finance, but at the same time also we need to scale it up because without scaling we cannot attract private investment, also the foreign investment in our country, since scaling the climate finance is a crucial issue for the country. And also the fossil fuel transition. As you know that Bangladesh is still heavily reliant on the fossil fuel, like we produce our power from the gas and imported fuel. So given that our dependency on the fossil fuel, this COP30 will be a push factor to accelerate the just transition away from fossil fuels towards renewable sources. But then again, for Bangladesh, we will need technical support. And also, if you look at the key themes of COP30, that's transitioning energy, industry, and transport. Then we have stewarding forest and ocean biodiversity, transforming agriculture and food systems, building resilience for cities, infrastructure, and water, fostering human and social development, cross-cutting enablers and accelerators. For countries like Bangladesh and all other developing countries, transitioning energy, industry, and transport will be a crucial one. Then again, building resilience for cities and infrastructure and water, fostering human and social development, also all other cross-cutting issues that actually includes financing and scaling up. Since we are going to the COP30, now look at our progress since COP26. As you know, this is a ratchet mechanism. Every 4 years we meet at the COP and we look at our progress since previous years. So since COP26, which was one of the pivotal important conference of the parties, we formulated the new collective quantified goals commitments to USD 30 billion a year in a public climate finance and USD 1.3 trillion a year mobilization public-private by 2035. And also countries enhance their NDC's nationally determined contribution to reduce global carbon emission, and also they have submitted their climate prosperity plan to the UNFCCC. And also we have successfully operationalized of the loss and damage fund. And also once we have discussed at COP26, 12 donor government pledges over USD 600 million to least developed countries fund, which supports projects like developing resilient buildings and strengthening early warning system in least developed countries. Now look at the global climate goals and national interest. So what are the global goals? To limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, emission reduction goals from the energy, transport, manufacturing industry, agriculture, and all other sectors, and the finance and support, which is most important for all of for the least developed countries and developing countries. For instance, the United Nations Global Policy Model, UNGPM, projected that developing countries require around USD 1.1 trillion for climate finance from 2025, and this figure will increase to around USD 1.8 trillion by 2030. At COP29, countries agreed to mobilize at least USD 300 million for climate finance per year by 2035. Now, going into the Belém, Brazil, now we will try to sort out and strategize how we can collect these commitments. The new collective quantified goals will replace the existing USD 100 billion goal that is due to expire in 2025. And what is Bangladesh's interest in this case, and what Bangladesh can put forward, and what Bangladesh can take it to the discussion table? The implementation of National Adaptation Plan will require USD 230 billion during 2023 to 2025. Bangladesh will also need a total investment of USD 116.18 billion to implement the nationally determined contribution that has been submitted recently to UNFCCC. And also we require climate resilience, and which also require our transform and adaptation. Bangladesh will need climate financing largely in the form of concessional and grant form to avoid debt stress. In this case, I think Bangladesh can negotiate with the global communities more, because we need more time, and we need the finance in the form of concessional and grant forms, because otherwise maybe our debt stress will increase, and we may have a pressure from the external sectors. So priorities for Bangladesh is to bridge the financing gap, strengthen disaster preparedness and infrastructure, investment in agriculture and food security, strengthen the capacity of local governments, CSS and communities to design, implement context-specific adaptation solution, prevent climate-induced migration, gender-responsive climate action, and also ensure safe drinking water in the coastal areas, addressing health risks, vector-borne, waterborne disease. Given that point, if you look at the southwestern part of our region, that is heavily impacted by the salinity intrusion, where safe drinking is very scarce, and yes, and also challenges for the countries is the fossil fuel dependencies, as I have earlier mentioned, that we may end up taking the burden of external sector, and also slow uptake of renewable resources, and rapid urbanization, and the manufacturing expansion driving our rising carbon emission. So way forward for Bangladesh is to close up the financing gap, strengthen policy coherence, leverage technology for climate action, empower local action. And here are some of the questions that we may discuss already. I think the distinguished guests and panelists received. And with this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. I would now, thank you very much. And I welcome Dr. Ainul Nishad. We will hear from him later on. I would like to now ask Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, who's going to be online, Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute, SDPI, and the Chairman, Board of Directors of National Disaster Risk Management Fund, who's joining us from Pakistan. You have 5 minutes. I'm sorry that I can't give you much more time. So can we have Dr. Suleri online? Is he online?
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, you're very audible. Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a great honor to join today's very important discussion, though virtually. And the topic that you have identified, basically not only in Bangladesh, but I think this topic should be a point of discussion in most of the developing countries, especially in the run-up to COP30, as we are planning to move to COP30. Now, you are discussing national commitments and global goals, and one may argue here that these national commitments, at least in Global South, we were told from the MDGs days that our national commitment should be aligned with the global commitment. And then we realized that while in South we had been trying to pursue these goals, we had our commitments, though half-heartedly, though with lack of resources and lack of expertise. There was a shift, and the global north start diverting from many of those global goals. In case of MDG, it was very clear. MDG 1 and 7, those were contradictory if those were not aligned together. I'm talking of poverty reduction and this environmental conservation. While many of us, we have been trying to pursue poverty reduction while preserving the environmental and climate goals. We realized that many countries, they were able to alleviate poverty while compromising on climate, and I'm especially referring to China and some other countries where we had this example of poverty alleviation. Similarly, now in COP30, while we will be discussing our NDCs and our climate ambitions, climate actions, one can very clearly see that even America's withdrawal from Paris Agreement is an old story, but now France, which was the flag barrier of Paris agenda, now in EU and in France, there is a discussion going on to delay achievement of targets of Paris Agreement by a few years because of Ukraine war and everything. So the point I'm trying to make that we are at a crossroad where we have two choices. The first choice is either we follow the global agenda, and B is that we have our indigenous agenda. And from Pakistan, I know Bangladesh has actually made a lot of success on that front, almost made Bangladesh a cyclone-proof country. In Pakistan, the calamities that keep on affecting us, especially floods and then these heat crisis, it keeps on reminding us that our domestic agenda, whether we follow any COP or not, whether we follow any SDG or not, our domestic agenda has to be aligned with certain these established principles. And the first principle is, of course, protection of lives and livelihoods of our people. And second is providing food security and health. And the third and most important is taking care of drinking water and sanitation. So I don't need any external person to come and tell me that I need to feed my children, I need to take care of their health, I need to take care of their education. That is my domestic priority. Now, if one looks at the response from many of those developed nations, again, either we can withdraw from COP commitments, Paris Agreement, etc., as United States has done. The second choice that is given to the world is to wait for next elections in America. Maybe a change in administration can bring these agenda on the radar of America, and till then we can wait. And both of these, the first two scenarios, they are collective suicide, I believe. And the third one is that we fill in the leadership vacuum and leadership gap, and we try to actually do what we were expecting from global north. And that is where I'll be going, this agenda, I'll be taking to COP30, that we have our domestic priorities, and we can't wait for developed nations to fulfill their commitments, and so that we can start our initiatives. We will keep on doing what we can do, not for the sake of meeting any commitment, but for the sake of our own people. And For that, of course, finance is a real challenge, real issue. Again, from Pakistan example, I can tell you in 2022, we had this disastrous flood. We had the pledges for $10.8 billion. And today, while sitting in 2025, only 25% of those pledges those get materialized. Rest of them, they were just promises. Again, out of that $10.84 billion, only $500 million was the grant or technical assistance. Rest of all, they are commercial loans. So if in the name of climate finance, I have to get my loans reappropriated, that simply means that in order to align my domestic priorities and my domestic agenda with the global goals, I need to take care of the finances from innovative ways and innovative measures. And I think carbon markets is one of those. This Resilience Sustainability Fund, Bangladesh has very successfully used that. Pakistan would be starting using it. I think we will receive the first tranche of $1.4 billion RSF in a couple of weeks. Understanding how that resilience support fund can actually be a multiplier to attract more funds from corporate sector and from other initiatives, and then try to actually use our own, as in Pakistan we call it PSGP, Public Sector Development Programs and funds, to make us more climate resilience. I am a firm believer that by borrowing we cannot make our nations climate resilient. We will have two choices, at least in Pakistan: either we will sink in water or we will sink in debt crisis. So our domestic agenda, which is actually supported by our own domestic resources, no matter how little they are, and believing in people. This is my last point, ladies and gentlemen, that in case of Pakistan, the loss and damage assessment for 2022 flood was $30 billion. Now, as I told you, that if we exclude the Saudi oil payment, Saudi oil supply and deferred payment, the total amount that we received is around 24%. So if you go to those flood-affected areas
I
now...
will have to ask you to wind up as fast as
yes,
you can.
that's my last sentence. If we go to these flood-affected areas, you will find that the life is back to normal, if not 100%, at least 50%, 60%. Now, it's a simple calculation, $30 billion loss, and if life is back to normal at least by 50%, it means that the communities, from their own resources, they have spent at least $10 billion. And that is my last point. We need to believe in communities. We need to believe in our own resources and own initiatives. And we need to strengthen the community's resilience while we go to COP30. Instead of going there with our victimhood mentality and for borrowing, we need to put on table that this is what our communities, they have spent by themselves. And when we are talking of loss and damage fund or any other climate finance, it's the matching grant we are talking about. It's not that we are just borrowing or we are just depending on their arms or their graciousness. And Bangladesh is a pioneer in microfinance. Bangladesh is a pioneer in community resilience. Actually, we look at up to Bangladesh to replicate many models. And I hope that Global South together can raise this voice, G77 plus China, in COP30. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr.
And sorry
Suleri.
for taking...
No, thank you, Dr. Suleri. We have with us our Honorable Advisor for Environment, Rizwana Hassan, who listened to the last speech, the bit of your speech. A bit pressed for time because we began a little late. I would now like to ask Mr. Mohammad Shamsud-Doha, who's the Chief Executive of Center for Participatory Research and Development, CPRD. Again, request him to be a bit careful about time. Thank you.
But she's well known.
জি অনেক ধন্যবাদ many thanks honorable advisor to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and also the moderator of this session and a very good and expert panelist here. In relation to my discussion, I would like to make a bridge between the key issues of negotiation at the global level, UNFCCC policy, and what Bangladesh could do in national level. And I will be brief maybe in 5 minutes. In relation to climate change negotiation, there are several conflicting issues, as we know. And the presentation also highlighted a few. One is how to scale up our new quantified finance target, currently 300 billion to 1.3 billion within a year. So this is a challenge. Currently, we have only 300 billion pledges from the developed countries towards developing countries for implementing all the activities, adaptation, mitigation, technology transfer, finance, and others. And that fund should come, as agreed at last COP Baku, from a range of sources, private sector, public sector, green loans, grants, security, all the instrument of climate finance has been referred under 300 billion pledges. But problem is that 300 billion pledges is not enough. 300 billion pledges didn't tell that how much amount should go to adaptation and how much to the mitigation. Our experiences shows that the previous implementation of climate change finance provided more than 90% of finance to the mitigation, not to the adaptation. As the climate vulnerable countries, our demand should be the global climate finance should balance allocation between adaptation and mitigation, and also balance allocation between grants and loans. We expect at least 30% grants, not only 5% grants. So this is a clear demand should be from the developing countries to the global negotiation. Otherwise, Bangladesh and many other developing countries will be indebted by the finance or investment of the developed countries and the multilateral development banks. And this is going to happen in future shortly. In relation to loss and damage finance, we had a great expectation from the global negotiation. We demanded compensation. We demanded trillions of dollars for compensating loss and damage, but we found very little amount. And currently the pledge amount is 760 million for all the countries for addressing loss and damages. Among 760 million, we have only 250 delivered finance for addressing loss and damage. So we demand scale up of loss and damage finance, not loans, but a shared portion could be as grant, and ensure that the developing countries can have priority access to that loss and damage finance. In relation to mitigation, this is key demand. I mean, we must limit global average temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius by end of the century. There is no compromise on this. If we fail to do this, then Bangladesh and other developing countries will be doomed under the impacts of climate change. I mean, cyclone, riverbank erosion, displacement migration, all will be increased in the near future. So we must concentrate to limit global average temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and that's why we need to scale up our ambition under the NDCs. Many of the developed countries have not submitted their NDCs. So we should have a strong call at COP30 that all the developed countries should develop their NDCs aligned to 1.5 degrees Celsius goal, not compromising that goal. In relation to achieving 1.5 degrees Celsius goal, we must end fossil fuel use, not Bangladesh, because Bangladesh didn't even started using fossil fuel, because Bangladesh is not an industrialized country. If I consider the historical responsibility, all the developed countries should stop investing fossil fuel production and also expand its marketing. Unfortunately, investment in fossil fuel production has been doubled than even the last decade. So if we continue to investing fossil fuel, if we continue to creating market for the fossil fuel, then we cannot limit global average temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So we should have a clear decision at COP30 that we must end fossil fuel use. There's a concern that we are talking many different issues for ending fossil fuel. One is just transition. So just transition, we're talking about just transition. The government of Bangladesh included just transition under the NDCs, and we also established a work program for just transition, but there is no money for just transition, for implementing just transition. So means of implementation is a major concern for all the climate change activities. Means of implementation means finance, technology, and capacity building support. So when we talk about measures, then everybody is agreed on the measures. But when we talk about finance, means of implementation, then nobody is talking about means of implementation. So without any means of implementation, countries like Bangladesh cannot implement the robust emission reduction and also just transition. The other concern, which is very important for our developed country counterpart, that in relation to just transition, there is a conflicting issues in relation to cross-border carbon adjustment. Cross-border carbon adjustment means that developed country will include some, compliances on the import from the developing countries. For instance, Bangladesh export ready-made garments. So the compliances could be the production of ready-made garments should ensure low carbon emissions. So the ready-made garments should include a carbon footprint on the production. If countries fail to, or Bangladesh fail to include this carbon footprint at the production of ready-made garments, then Bangladesh might lose market in the developed countries. So it's a kind of cross-border carbon adjustment, because in that way, developed country will reduce their own carbon emission reduction, investing in the developing countries, and also imposing compliance on the developing countries. So I think we should also be careful in relation to negotiating on the cross-border carbon adjustment, because it will create another burden to the developing countries. In relation to global goal on adaptation, this is also important that we already agreed on our targets. What would be adaptation targets? We are going to narrow down or limit our adaptation indicators to 100 at COP30. But one of the indicators that the developed countries are pushing, this is enabling factors. It says that developing countries should ensure governance and transparency in terms of adaptation activities. It could be a barrier for the developing countries to access to the adaptation finance. We agree that we need to ensure governance, transparency, accountability, but that should not be a barrier for accessing to climate finance, because countries cannot increase their accountability, transparency overnight. My final concern is that there are many issues of transboundary concern. One is displacement and migration. Nobody is talking about displacement and migration. Once upon a time, we had a particular agenda item under Cancun Adaptation Framework. It was a particular para 14F, that talks about displacement and migration. After that, we have included displacement and migration under the loss and damage negotiation, and we lost everything. So our appeal could be to the Bangladesh and also other developing countries to include a particular agenda item for addressing loss and damage. And without having an agenda item, we cannot address those critical concerns for Bangladesh and also other South Asian countries. The other concern, which is very important, Bangladesh also should communicate transboundary adaptation issues, because adaptation is a context-specific, adaptation is a country-specific. But in most of the cases, adaptation of Bangladesh is depending on the activities of our neighbors. For instance, if we fail to have rainfall data, flood data, then adaptation in the Haur areas, adaptation in the coastal areas, even adaptation in the northern part of the country will fail if we fail to negotiate fair water sharing. So in relation to adaptation, we also need to initiate our discussion on the regional perspective, how we could challenge the regional barriers of adaptation, challenges of adaptation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to now go to the next speaker who's online, Mr. Shri Ravi Shankar Prasad, Distinguished Fellow, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. I hope he's online. Would the organizers just check to see if he's online? If he's not, we'll ask him to be online and ask someone else to come in between, speak, and he can be the next speaker. Okay, he's not online, so we can go to the next speaker, who is Ms. Moushumi Parveen, Senior Climate Change Officer, Asian Development Bank. Again, try and keep time if you can, because we have so many speakers.
Thank you. I'll try to be very brief. Okay. While listening to the keynote speaker presentation, as well as the earlier speakers' talking point. Just a couple of points was coming to my mind that as a developing country, what we have policy, we have institutional framework, and we have some internal system already in place. But what we do not have as a country, like we need finance. We have, but we do not have as we expected. Like for only adaptation, we need annually 8.5 billion USD. From internal sources, the government is allocating around 2 to 3 billion from their own sources. And from international community, it's coming 0.52 billion per year, meaning that 3.5 is coming from domestic and international sources. But only for adaptation, we need still 5 billion per year. So the question is, where does the money come from? It's a very critical question. We need some internal preparedness as well, like coordination, institutional readiness, etc. Internally, we can develop that. We do not have. So the last, we need that capacity. We do not have sufficient data that can inform the decision maker to take the decision. So we have something and we do not have something. So now the question that what can we do for upcoming COP and what will be the negotiation point? To my mind, the 4 selling point we can do as the negotiator can think about. One is the concessionality. We are talking more about we are vulnerable, we need the technical assistance support, we need grant, but to me it's an old era. So this is not really a very selling point that you are vulnerable and somebody will give you money. So this era is gone. Now, the question we can think about, how can we trap the concessional resources from the international fund? Of course, some technical assistance grant, etc. On the other hand, how can we pull our domestic resource from the private sector, from selling the carbon credit? This is the new era we need to think about. So this is number 1. Number 2 is mobilizing the private sector internally. So as of now, Bangladesh doesn't have a very clear mechanism. How can we extract the private sector money into the climate action? So that we can think about. The 4th point is the Bangladesh is demonstrated as a very solid experience on climate change adaptation. So we can raise our voice as a global leader, as our Pakistani colleague already told that we can visualize ourselves more as a global, the regional climate leader, so that our voice can be heard and we can be very actively played at the negotiation role to extract international finance. And the last point, the co-benefit. Though we are telling that we are not polluting, but we are not that much innocent, because our carbon emission trend is already increasing, and it's increasing, so that the activity that bring both adaptation and mitigation co-benefit, that we can also think through and we can also negotiate at the global scale. How can we trap the activities and fund that can also produce the adaptation and mitigation co-benefit? I think I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being within time. I just want to ask, do we have missed any of the other online speakers online? I would like to ask them, but in between, while we are getting ready for if any of the online speakers are online, and if anyone, the organizers can let me know, I can then move on to Shireen Sultana Lira. Can you just ask if they're going to be online and around what time? Yeah? Let me know, okay. So Shireen Sultana Lira, Program Manager, Embassy of Switzerland in Bangladesh. So Lira, over to you.
Thank you, Kushiapa, for giving me the floor. I will try to be very specific, and I would like to thank Moshumi Appa to cover many of my points, which I don't need to repeat. I have, as I'm representing the Embassy of Switzerland, so I have to speak on behalf of Switzerland first, then I will come to Bangladesh side. So Embassy of Switzerland, from our side, I think we strongly believe in our commitment to Paris Agreement, and we are contributing. Switzerland is one of the countries fulfilling its global share in GCF and contributed the amount they are supposed to be, which is now 842 million. And also we have also submitted our NDC 30, is one of the first country who submitted NDC 30. And in Bangladesh, apart from our global contribution, in Bangladesh, we are supporting local action actually. Switzerland strongly believe in decentralization and localization. So we are not very much into national planning. Our other development partners, they are supporting national planning. But from our side, we are more into local climate action, supporting the organization, local organization to take more action-oriented work at the ground. So that is one of Switzerland's, I would say, that strength, that Switzerland has been supporting Bangladesh for more than 50 years on local democracy, localization, and decentralization. And in climate change, when I started to develop the portfolio, I have been advising the embassy that we need to work locally, we need to support, and the action is more important than talking. Talking is, of course, important. We have heard already Doha Bhai and all others, all the issues. But now coming to my Bangladesh, being Bangladeshi, as a Bangladeshi hat, I would like to share some of my thinking, how I feel about what we need to do. I think we can make a lot of evidence that how Bangladesh is affected and what can be the consequence. But as Moushumi Appa mentioned, I mean, to be very realistic, we need to understand and think the global politics apart from our local national politics, and to understand the financing situation where the resources are moving. We can make a big noise, that's important, but does it make a big changes? Is somebody living in Europe, the voters or the citizens there, they will think about themselves first and why they should contribute to a country if we say that, okay, our 10 million people will go underwater if we don't do this, that. So this is the reality. I mean, it may sound a bit harsh, but that's what we know, working with the embassy and development organization. That's something that we come across with this harshly reality, how difficult it is to mobilize this taxpayers' money when we are talking about grants, especially. So we can ask about that, okay, we don't want loan, we want more grant. But we can continue that, but it's not going to happen. The more tough time is coming. So one of the things that Moushumi Appa mentioned, that we need to think differently, we need to be pragmatic, we need to understand the global politics, and we need to have our own agenda. Bangladesh, as a Bangladesh, what we need to do, we need to revisit our national planning, national agenda. And we need to act locally. We need to have our action on the ground. Even if in the COP, we can go in every COP, but we need to show what we are doing, and then why should they contribute. There's the transparency, accountability, all this mechanism in every project developed from revenue budget or like grant budget. We all know that we have a huge challenge in ensuring transparency, accountability of the climate project, climate finance. So that's a big challenge. Every time we negotiate, we want to talk about, okay, we need money. Then it becomes the first question that what is your current transparency mechanism? Are you spending well? So I came across a study, I think last week, Doha Bhai, you shared it in the group, that in LDC countries or developing countries, every $5 we take as a loan, we have to pay back $7 per just to repay. So ultimately, it's not like every money we are getting as a loan, But if we don't ensure that, okay, how we are investing and is there is a good value for money, or is it actually going to the ground? So it is increasing our burden, the burden of our population. Every population, every time it's in our loan burden is increasing. I think there are enough data and evidence. So that we need to, as a Bangladesh, I think that should be one of our priority to revisit. And also, another one point, I will make another point, also investing. From the Switzerland side, what I see that in allocating budget for research, science. So if we want to make our climate action more practical, we need to have enough innovation and enough capacity on the ground from our own resources, own university and everywhere. So that's where we need to invest a lot from the revenue budget. That will be one of my urge to our honorable advisor to advocate for that, because without enough scientific expertise or innovation, it's very difficult to bring solution from abroad and to take action. So I will not take more time. All experts are here, and thank you very much again for inviting the embassy and also giving me the chance to speak. Thank you.
Now we have Mr. Ulrich Kleppmann from Head of Development Cooperation, German Development Cooperation, Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany. We have some of our development partners giving their views, and then 5 minutes if you can, or you want a little more? No, you speak, it'll start coming. I thought so. You just speak.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Honorable advisor, esteemed moderator, ladies and gentlemen here, I'm always a little bit afraid if I'm invited in a discussion where it starts with a battle of figures and numbers. And this is what I observe here. We are talking about mainly money, what must come and what it is needed. I will say, if you want to feed a hungry one, you can use a $50 lobster menu, but you can also take 200 taka for chicken biryani at one of the street food booths here on the circle. It is not always the money the problem. The problem is to understand the seriousity of the problem. And we are all sitting in the same boat. Yes, the industrial countries caused the climate change. No doubt about it. Yes, we have all to do and to contribute to that. And we were listening to a lot of figures. I mean, I can also respond and say, if I ask somebody here, what is the contribution of my country? I'm representing only Germany. I'm not the development countries at a glance. What is the percentage of Germany contributing to the climate change or to the carbon emission per year? It's 2%. So a lot of people would say 10, 15. No, it's 2%. But we cannot say, no, we are emitting so less, so it's not our problem. No, it is. We have published recently, or we endorsed the press release with the last year's figures, how much money Germany was commissioning and contributing to the funds, the global funds for climate change, where countries as Bangladesh can apply for. It is 13.87 billion dollars. Almost 14% of this 100 billion goal of the last COP. So the question of the daily newspapers was, and how much money Bangladesh gets? We said, we cannot answer this question because you must ask your government, you must ask ERD, the Ministry of Environment. We can only say what we know. What we learned is that some funds are very popular, the governments of developing countries are applying for regularly, and some other funds are not that popular because the application process is a little bit complicated. However, there is still money in the box and it should be used. I disagree what you said in your introductory words. You said there was a lot of things promised in the COPs and nothing happened. No. What would be if there would have been never a COP or a Paris Agreement? How would the world look like if there would have never been any kind of idea, initiative, or such things, or conferences? We would have a really, really different world. And I think even the expectations were never met, a lot of things were achieved. Maybe not that what everybody believes, but there was something achieved. I know I have to be brief. I would actually underline what you said with the private sector. Yes, of course, the development countries should be asked to do more. I represent only one country, and I think 14% of 100 from one country is quite significant. But also, since we are all sitting in one boat, also in Bangladesh can be done more. For instance, you have import regulations on equipment for renewable energies. If this could be a little bit made easier to import such kind of techniques from abroad, customs, fees, or whatsoever, to make it more attractive for the private sector to invest in that. We have an ongoing portfolio of 1.3 billion euros, mainly in renewable energy and climate measures, subsidizing, for instance, companies who want to install a rooftop solar system. And the funny thing is, it is not available money, it's more or less the burdens at the border. I would summarize like this. So, I'm very glad that the NDC, as it was described today, was submitted, and we see a lot of very promising facts inside. However, as it was underlined by my colleague from Switzerland and from ADB, the private sector must be taken as a chance, and it must be done more to involve the private sector more. There is a saying, I think you all know it here in Asia, the longest way starts with the first step. If everybody is considering himself or herself as a part of the system, what you can do, then I think we can put a small spark in the mind, in everyone's mind, to feel like a group of one big thing in the world to do the right thing to fight the climate change. Because we in Germany, and this is what I want to say at the end, we also face the climate change. We have something in summer, hailstone showers, the hailstones big as like tennis balls, damaging people, vehicles, and even killing people. We have floods, so don't believe that only Bangladesh is affected. Of course, there is difference between our both countries, but there is an effect, and we all have to consider ourselves as a piece of a bigger system which has to work together. And my last word would be, don't look only on the figures, think about on the ideas we didn't have discovered yet to do something against the climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just...
5 minutes, yeah?
No, yeah, so perfect. So I just wanted to state that I'm not saying it's a thing. I said people who have been following it are feeling a little, tired that it doesn't achieve much. I'm not saying that the promises are not needed. I'm not saying the discussion is not needed. It's just that people are feeling a bit jaded that each time they go and promises are made and plans are made, discussions are made, and then nothing gets done. The action is not being seen. Anyway, thank you very much. Can I ask Nishad Bhai, Dr. Ainul Nishat, if you would like to go now? Dr. Ainul Nishat needs no introduction to anyone in this room, or even if people are online. Nishad Bhai, dare I ask you to keep yourself within 5 minutes, or will it be too difficult?
Assalamu alaikum. First, I apologize for being late. এবং আমার সুনাম এমন হয়ে গেছে যে মাইক একবার ধরলে ছাড়তে চাই না। So having said that, I'm very happy today এই রুমে এতজন এবং যে প্রোগ্রামটা দেখলাম এতজন বক্তা, অর্থাৎ ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জের ব্যাপারে এত লোক ইন্টারেস্টেড সবাই, কিন্তু ইন্টারেস্ট হচ্ছে ভাষা সাবজেক্টের ডেপথ জানা নেই। দ্যাট ইজ মাই প্রবলেম, দ্যাট ইজ ওয়াই আই এম সুইচিং ওভার টু বাংলা, যাতে সবাই না বুঝতে পারে, ইংরেজি যারা বোঝে তারা। ওকে, হ্যাভিং সেড দ্যাট, আলোচনার উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে COP30-তে কি হবে এবং বিশ্বে যা হচ্ছে তার সাথে তাল মিলিয়ে বাংলাদেশ কিভাবে চলতে পারে এবং বাংলাদেশের প্রায়োরিটি, ন্যাপ, এনডিসি ইত্যাদি। আমি প্রথমে কিছু উল্টাপাল্টা বলি, বিশেষ করে মাননীয় উপদেষ্টা আছেন, তাকে একটু সেন্সিটাইজ করতে চেষ্টা করি। প্রথম কথা হচ্ছে, অফকোর্স শি ইজ one of the leading experts on climate change related issues, so I don't have to guide her or teach her on anything. একটা জিনিস হচ্ছে কি, this is a global problem. এনডিসি আমরা উৎপাদন করি 0.47 ভাগ কি মানে 5 ভাগের কম, 0.5, মানে 100 ভাগের 1 ভাগের অর্ধেক ভাগেরও কম। সো বাংলাদেশ তার এনডিসি কমিটমেন্ট ট্রিপল করে ফেললেও কিছু আসবে না, যাবে না, যা হওয়ার তা হবে। আমি গ্লোবাল লিটারেচার ফলো করি, লিস্টার বিভিন্ন ফলো করি। গত 1 মাসে বহু কাণ্ড ঘটে গেছে। যেমন গত পরশুদিন থেকে প্রচার হচ্ছে যে আমরা যদি নেট জিরোতে যেতে চাই কার্বন এমিশন, তাহলে রিনিউয়েবল এনার্জি বাড়াতে হবে। ডোনাল্ড ট্রাম্প সাহেব রিনিউয়েবল এনার্জিতে, সোলার অ্যান্ড উইন্ড এনার্জিতে কোনো ফান্ড করবেন না, বাট উনি যেটা বলছেন সেটাও কিন্তু হাইলি প্রমিজিং। ওয়েভ এনার্জি, সমুদ্রের যে থার্মাল গ্রেডিয়েন্ট আছে সেইটা, এবং বিদ্যুৎ দিয়ে বিদ্যুৎ উৎপাদন করা। মানে আমার যদি একটা ড্যাম থাকে, কন্টিনিউয়াসলি যে এনার্জি পাওয়ার তৈরি করছে, দিনের বেলা ডিমান্ড কম, সেই ডিমান্ড দিয়ে ভাটির থেকে পানি ড্যামের উপরে দেবে এবং ওই পানি দিয়ে আবার বিদ্যুৎ উৎপাদন। অস্ট্রেলিয়া করে, তাদের পিক লোড এইভাবেই তারা ম্যানেজ করে এবং তারা ক্লেম করছে যে ওয়েভ এনার্জি থেকে অর্ধেক চাহিদা মেটানো যেতে পারে। বাট কবে পারা যাবে সেই টেকনোলজি, দ্যাট উই ডোন্ট নো। আমি বিদেশে পড়াশোনা করেছি পিএইচডির জন্য, এখন থেকে কত বছর, 40-45 বছর আগে। তখন আমার সুপারভাইজারের এক ছাত্র ওয়েভ এনার্জি নিয়ে কাজ করত, এবং ওয়েভ এনার্জি যদি একটা পার্টিকুলার পয়েন্টে, এটা তো হচ্ছে ডিস্টেন্সে, কিন্তু একটা পার্টিকুলার পয়েন্টে দেখলে এই করছে পানিটা, তাহলে ওখানে একটা হাঁসের মতো, নাম ছিল সল্টার ডাক, এটা এরকম করছে এবং তাতে বিদ্যুৎ উৎপাদন। আরে 40 বছর ধরে এখনও তো ওটা প্র্যাকটিক্যালি হয়নি কিছু। ইউকে চেষ্টা করেছে, যে বছর বসালো তাদের সল্টার ডাক বিদ্যুৎ উৎপাদনের জন্যে, তার কিছুদিনের মধ্যে বড় একটা সাইক্লোনিক ওয়েদার এসে, হারিকেন ও টাইফুন এসে এটা ভেঙে দিয়ে চলে গেল, তাই না? ফ্রান্সে টাইডাল এনার্জি উৎপাদন হচ্ছে বোধহয় 1970-এর দশক থেকে, তারপরে আর হয়নি। এখন উন্নত বিশ্ব চেষ্টা করছে নিউক্লিয়ার পাওয়ারকে পপুলারাইজ করার জন্য, এবং ওয়েস্টার্ন ওয়ার্ল্ড হ্যাজ অলরেডি ডিক্লেয়ার্ড নিউক্লিয়ার পাওয়ার ইজ এ সেফ গ্রিন এনার্জি। যাই হোক, সো বিশ্বে কি হচ্ছে সেগুলো আমাদের জানতে হবে, কিন্তু আমাদের কাজটা আমাদের করতে হবে, এটা কেউ করে দেবে না। সেইখানে ন্যাপ কাজটা আসে। প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগ, আজকে যদি একটা বড় সাইক্লোন হয়, যেটা হতে পারে, গত বছর, এই বছর এই 15 দিন আগে ফিলিপিন্সে হয়েছে, তাইওয়ানে হয়েছে, তাই না? এখন যদি একটা সাইক্লোন হয়ে জলোচ্ছ্বাসের উচ্চতা 16 ফুট 17 ফুট হয়, আমাদের তো কোনো আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিংই নাই তাতে কি হবে। বাঁধ সবগুলো ভাঙবে। কদিন আগে বাঁধ ভেঙেছে কোস্টাল এরিয়াতে স্বাভাবিক জোয়ারে। ওয়াই? কারণ এগুলোর মেনটেনেন্স নেই। সরি, আমি থেমে যাই, না হলে রেজওয়ান আমাকে বকা দেবে, কারণ এটা তার মন্ত্রণালয়ের বিষয়। ওকে, ওয়াটার সেক্টরে আমি মোটামুটি পিএনজি, পার্সন নন গ্রাটা, কাজে আর বেশি বাড়াবো না। সো হ্যাভিং সেড দ্যাট, আমরা যেটা বলি সেটা হচ্ছে থিঙ্ক গ্লোবালি, অ্যাক্ট গ্লোবালি, অ্যান্ড অ্যাক্ট ন্যাশনালি। এখন এখানে গ্লোবালি যে কর্মকাণ্ড হয় সেখানে 198টা পার্টি সবাই, এবং এখানে কোনো ভোটিং নাই। তাহলে কি হবে? দল পাকায় কাজ করতে হবে। 4টা দল আছে, ইউরোপিয়ান ইউনিয়ন, G77 অ্যান্ড চায়না, আমব্রেলা গ্রুপ, ইন্টিগ্রিটি গ্রুপ। এখন ওই G77 অ্যান্ড চায়না 145-48টা দেশ, তাদের মধ্যে আবার 12-13টা ছোট ছোট ভাগ আছে, কিছু খুব অ্যাক্টিভ। আমরা এতদিন এলডিসির মাধ্যমে G77 হয়ে চেষ্টা করতাম, কথাবার্তা বলতাম। এখন তো সামনের বছর যদি এলজিডি না থাকে তাহলে কি হবে? তাহলে তো আরেকটা দলে যেতে হবে। রাজনৈতিক যারা দায়িত্ব নেবেন তাদের কিন্তু এখন থেকে সেটা ওয়ার্কআউট করতে হবে। এই এলডিসি গ্রুপের মধ্যে সবচেয়ে পাওয়ারফুল যে গ্রুপটা সেটা হচ্ছে এলএমডিসি, লাইক মাইন্ডেড ডেভেলপিং কান্ট্রি। এবং এখানে যারা কথা বলে তাদের মধ্যে যে আতাত আছে, দোস্তি আছে, এটা কিন্তু জানতে হবে। ভারত বড় দালাল, তার সবচেয়ে ক্লোজ দোস্তকে পাকিস্তান, এরপরে দোস্তকে চীন। আরে খবরের কাগজ পড়লে দেখি চীন আর ভারত, আর ভারত আর পাকিস্তান, এখন আবার যোগ হয়েছে পাকিস্তান আফগানিস্তান, তো এরা মারামারি করছে। সো আমরা কি করব? এটার মধ্যে নাক ডগালাবো, নিজের একটা দল বানাবো? সো এরপরে আমার যেটা বক্তব্য হচ্ছে, প্রচুর লোক কপে যায়, বেলেমে কত যাবে জানি না, কিন্তু তার আগের কপগুলোতে 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 80,000 লোক পর্যন্ত গেছে। দুবাইতে 80,000 লোক গেছে। গিয়ে কি করে? বাজার করে, বেড়াতে যায়, নাচ গান করে, খাওয়া দাওয়া করে। বাট এফেক্টিভলি যদি পার্টিসিপেট করতে হয় গ্লোবাল প্রসেসে, তাহলে প্যারিস এগ্রিমেন্টের অধীনে 8টা বিল্ডিং ব্লকে আলোচনা হয়। মিটিগেশন, তার গ্লোবাল টার্গেট ফিক্স করা হয়েছে, ওয়েল বিলো 2 ডিগ্রি, পারলে 1.5 ডিগ্রি। আইপিসিসি 5-6 বছর আগে বলেছে 3.7 হয়ে যাবে। এখন ওখানে আরেকটা শব্দ আছে, টিপিং পয়েন্ট। সমুদ্রের টিপিং পয়েন্ট, সমুদ্রের রিসোর্সেসের টিপিং পয়েন্ট হচ্ছে 1.3-1.4 ডিগ্রি সেলসিয়াস। কারণ সমুদ্র যে পরিমাণ প্রোটিন প্রডিউস করে পৃথিবীর অর্ধেক সাপ্লাই দিতে পারে। আমরা বাঙালিরা সমুদ্রের মাছ খাই না, তো পছন্দ করি না, কিন্তু ওটাই কিন্তু মেইন জিনিস। এবং সমুদ্রের পানিতে যে অ্যালগি আছে, আর এলজি আছে, সেটা 50% কার্বন ডাইঅক্সাইড সিকুয়েস্টার করতে পারে। তো সেইটার দিকে নজর যাচ্ছে। টিপিং পয়েন্ট পার হয়ে গেছে। ফুড সিকিউরিটি টিপিং পয়েন্ট বোধ করি 2 ডিগ্রি, 2.5 ডিগ্রি এটসেট্রা আসছে কিছুদিনের মধ্যেই। তো তাই যদি হয়, মিটিগেশনের টার্গেট ঠিক আছে, হয়ে গেছে, এটা বাস্তবায়ন করার ব্যাপার। মেইন কালপ্রিট যারা, ইউএসএ, ইউরোপিয়ান ইউনিয়ন, আজকে কিন্তু তারা মেইন না। আজকে 1 নম্বর চায়না, 3 নম্বর ইন্ডিয়া। এবং একটা কথা সবার কাছে শুনি, আমি বুঝি না, আমি কি আমার বোঝার ভুল কিনা, USA cannot go out of the UNFCCC. They have signed and ratified it. এবং এটা করতে গেলে তাদের সিনেটে শুধু 51 হলে হবে না, 60 না হলে তো তারা রেজলিউশন নিতেই পারে না। ইউএস এর গভর্নমেন্ট বন্ধ কেন? কারণ তারা বিল পাস করতে পারেনি। সো হ্যাভিং সেড দ্যাট, মিটিগেশন ওকে, আমাদের ক্ষুদ্র ক্ষমতাতে যা আছে করব। সিপিডি কেন এটার উপরে সারাদিন ধরে আলোচনা করছে আমি বুঝি না। ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ যদি তারা বুঝতেন তাহলে ওটার জন্য আচ্ছা দিতে হয় টিক চিহ্ন, আমরা কি মিটিগেশন নিয়ে কথা বলেছি, আধা ঘন্টার একটা সেশন যথেষ্ট। আমাদের দেশে বাইল্যাটারাল ডোনার যারা, তাদের নিজেদের দেশে মাথা ব্যথা হচ্ছে মিটিগেশন করতে হবে, এবং তারা বাংলাদেশকে বলে করো করো মিটিগেশন করো। এটা তো বাংলাদেশের মাথা ব্যথা না। বোমা মেরে বাংলাদেশকে উড়াই দিলেও পৃথিবীর মিটিগেশনের ক্ষেত্রে কিছু হবে না। তাহলে বাংলাদেশকে যেটা করতে হবে অ্যাডাপ্টেশন। সো দ্বিতীয় আলোচনার বিষয় হচ্ছে অ্যাডাপ্টেশন। অ্যাডাপ্টেশনের এইবার বেলেম মিটিংয়ে প্রচুর আলোচনা হবে, কারণ গ্লোবাল টার্গেট তারা ফিক্স করতে চায়। যেমন আমাদের উপকূলের বাঁধ, যেটা নিয়ে রেজওয়ানাকে একটু নাড়া দিলাম, এগুলো অরিজিনালি ডিজাইন ছিল 20-year রিটার্ন পিরিয়ড। 1991-এ এটাকে 100-year রিটার্ন পিরিয়ডে কনভার্ট করা হয়, 100-year রিটার্ন পিরিয়ড। আমার ডান পাশে যিনি বসে আছেন তার দেশে করে 1000 বছর রিটার্ন পিরিয়ড, নেদারল্যান্ডে করে 10,000 বছর রিটার্ন পিরিয়ড। কত সেফ। হ্যাভিং সেড দ্যাট, অ্যাডাপ্টেশন। থার্ড হচ্ছে ফাইন্যান্স। এখানে ইআরডির বড় কর্তা বসে আছেন, ফাইন্যান্স ও লজ্জা পাচ্ছে। আচ্ছা বড় কর্তা, মেজো কর্তা বললাম, কারণ বড় কর্তার নাম মানে বড় কর্তা। এনিওয়ে, এখানে ফান্ড পৃথিবীতে গত কপে প্রমিসড হয়েছে $300 বিলিয়ন। আমরা বলছি 1.3 দিতে হবে। যেটা দিচ্ছে সেটা কি নেয়ার ক্ষমতা আমার আছে? নেই। সেইটাতে কাজ করতে হবে। সাদি আছেন এখানে, ওরা একটা প্রোগ্রাম রান করছেন এখন, ফান্ড কি করে কালেক্ট করতে হবে। সো তারা 1000 অফিসারকে ট্রেনিং দিয়েছে। চতুর্থ হচ্ছে টেকনোলজি ট্রান্সফার। বহু মিটিংয়ে আমি সমানে চিৎকার করি যে টেকনোলজি ট্রান্সফারের বেনিফিট আমরা নিচ্ছি না কেন। কারণ নিতে গেলে টেকনোলজি চাইলে ওই টেকনোলজির দরখাস্তটা করতে হবে ডিজিডিও এর মাধ্যমে, তার হাজারখানেক কাজ আছে। কেন এটা তাকে দেয়া হবে, তাই না? আমরা টেকনোলজির ক্ষেত্রে তেমন কিছু আনিনি। কিছু টাকা যেটা পেয়েছি সেটা দিয়ে কিছু স্যাম্পল বানিয়ে ডিওইর এন্ট্রেন্সে রাখা আছে। দেশ কি বেনিফিটেড হয়েছে? আই ডোন্ট থিঙ্ক সো। নেক্সট হচ্ছে ক্যাপাসিটি বিল্ডিং। আসলে আমাদের ক্যাপাসিটি নাই। এরপরে হচ্ছে লস অ্যান্ড ড্যামেজ, ওটা নিয়ে কথা বললাম না। তারপরে হচ্ছে কমপ্লায়েন্স। প্যারিস এগ্রিমেন্টে 2015-তে লিখে দেয়া হয়েছে যে তোমরা কমপ্লাই করবা থ্রু থিওরি অফ চেঞ্জের মাধ্যমে। আমাদের আইএমইডি যাদের কমপ্লায়েন্সটা চেক করার কথা, তারা কি থিওরি অফ চেঞ্জ সম্পর্কে জানে? আমাদের দেশ কি চলে থিওরি অফ চেঞ্জ দিয়ে? আমরা এলএফএ দিয়ে চলি। সো গ্লোবাল ইনস্ট্রাকশন, তোমার ট্রান্সপারেন্সিতে স্বচ্ছতা থাকতে হবে। সো আমি শেষ করি আমাকে থামিয়ে দেওয়ার আগেই, সেটা হচ্ছে দেশের ভিতরে আমাদের প্রচুর কাজ করার আছে, যেটা প্রয়োজন ইন্টারমিনিস্ট্রিয়াল ইন্টারসেক্টরাল কোঅর্ডিনেশন। ছোট্ট উদাহরণ দেই, প্রচুর বৃষ্টি হয়েছে, ফেনীতে বন্যা হয়েছে, রাস্তাগুলো রিপেয়ার করতে হবে, কে করবে? বাঁধগুলো ভেঙে গেছে, কে করবে? বাঁধ যিনি বানান, পানি উন্নয়ন বোর্ড, পানি মন্ত্রণালয়, তাদের রিপেয়ার করার কথা। ভিতরের রাস্তাঘাট যারা বানায় যেগুলো ভেঙে গেছে, তাদের রিপেয়ার করা উচিত এলজিইডি স্থানীয় সরকার মন্ত্রণালয়। খবরের কাগজে পড়লাম এটা দুর্যোগ ব্যবস্থাপনা মন্ত্রণালয় করবে। Why? They don't have the capacity, they don't have the basic knowledge on road construction. ওখানে ইঞ্জিনিয়ার যেগুলো আছে আমারই ছাত্র প্রাক্তন, বাট এইটুকু রেসপন্সিবিলিটি গভর্নমেন্ট ফিক্স করতে পারে না। এখানে কি যে টেকনোলজি ব্যবহার করে যে স্ট্যান্ডার্ডে রাস্তা তৈরি হবে, ইনশাল্লাহ সামনের বছর ভাঙবে আবার। সো অনেক কিছু করার আছে দেশের ভিতরে। বাইরের দিকে তাকিয়ে থাকবেন, অবশ্যই তাকিয়ে থাকব, কিন্তু তাদের কাছ থেকে নিতে হবে, নেয়ার দক্ষতা, ক্যাপাসিটি তৈরি করতে হবে। আই স্টপ হিয়ার, থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ।
থ্যাংক ইউ নিশাদ ভাই। আর নিশাদ ভাই যেটা আছে যেটা বলা হয় কিছু যে আকালমন্দকে লিয়ে ইশারা কাফি না, আমি জাস্ট উপর দিকে গেলাম আর বলে যে আমাকে থামানোর আগে আমি শেষ করছি। তো থ্যাংক ইউ। আই উইল, আমরা কি বাংলায় কন্টিনিউ করবো না ইংরেজিতে কন্টিনিউ করবো আমি জানি না। আমাদের বাংলায় করে, কিন্তু কয়েকজন এখানে আছে যারা বাংলা বোঝেন না বোধহয়। একটু বসে আমাদের না, আপনি সে আছেন।
একটা ক্ল্যারিটি চাইতে পারি? আপনি যে বলছিলেন টেকনোলজিতে আমরা কিছু আনতে পারিনি, ডিইউর এন্ট্রান্সে কিছু কিছু স্যাম্পল আছে, আমাকে যদি একটু বলতেন আমি ডিইউর সাথে একটু কথা বলতাম। টেকনোলজিগুলো
এটা কি এখনই বলে দিবে? বলে দেন,
আনবার আমরা
বলছে যখন।
আমি ঠাট্টা করে বলি যে একজন চিফ ইঞ্জিনিয়ারের সাথে যখন দেখা হয় যে তুমি কোন ব্যাচের, তো বেশিরভাগ উত্তর আসে 86, 87, 88। তার মানে হচ্ছে বাংলাদেশের স্ট্যান্ডার্ড হচ্ছে 86, 87, 88। তারপরে উন্নতি হয়নি। এই যে অ্যামেন্ডমেন্ট করি, কন্ট্রাক্টরদের পয়সা দেয়া হয় লেয়ার বাই লেয়ার করতে, তার কোনো সেটেলমেন্ট হবে না। আপনি পদ্মা সেতুতে যান, তার অ্যাপ্রোচ রোড ইজ কনস্ট্রাক্টেড উইথ স্যান্ড, নট ক্লে। কিন্তু ওখানে 1 মিলিমিটার পর্যন্ত সেটেলমেন্ট হয় না। রেজওয়ানা যেহেতু জিজ্ঞাসা করলেন তাকেই খোঁচাই। ওকে, এর কেন নদী ভাঙছে? ভাঙবে। যে নদী ভাঙে না তার কিছু প্রবলেম আছে, ভাঙনটা ঠেকাতে হবে। ওকে, গেলাম, জিজ্ঞাসা করলাম যে 250 কেজির বস্তা দিচ্ছ? উত্তর পেয়ে আমার মনে হলো হে ধরনী ভাগও আমি প্রবেশ করি। স্যার, কন্ট্রাক্টরদের কাছে এই কেজির বস্তা আছে, এই সাইজের বস্তা আছে। সো দ্যাট ইজ হোয়াট ডিটারমিনস আওয়ার চয়েস অফ টেকনোলজি। কেন অতগুলো, এবং ওখানে 40-50 জন পিএইচডি ধারী, শখানেক মাস্টার্স ডিগ্রি ধারী প্রকৌশলী আছে। কেউ কি ডিজাইন করতে পারে না? পদ্মা সেতুতে যেখানে কংক্রিট ব্লক কিংবা স্টোনের সাইজ হচ্ছে 1000 কেজি, 1 টন, তো তার পাশে যদি 250 কেজি দেয়, টিকবে? টিকবে না। আরেকটা জিনিস শিখেছে, জিও ব্যাগস। জিও ব্যাগ যখন বাংলাদেশে ইন্ট্রোডিউসড হয়, আমি সেই কমিটিতে ছিলাম 80s। কে বা কারা জিও ব্যাগস নিয়ে আসছে? জিও ব্যাগের টেকনোলজি আছে না, যে ব্যাগের মধ্যে ওই ব্যাগে বালু দিলে সেটা বেরিয়ে যাবে না। সো সব কিছুতেই এই যে রেগুলেটর, খুলনাতে প্রবলেম হচ্ছে। এই রেগুলেটরের এই টেকনোলজি ওয়াজ ফাইনালাইজড ইন 1972। ওয়াই? তারপরে কি বদলানো যায়নি? এর আগে যতজন পানি মন্ত্রী গেছেন, যত ডিজি গেছেন, সকলকে ডাচরা নেদারল্যান্ডে নিয়ে গেছে ওই টেকনোলজি শিখাতে, কিন্তু দেশে এসে আর বদলায় না। 90% of the regulators do not work.
I think point has been understood.
তাই না? কাজেই উই নো ইট। খুশিয়াপার সাথে কোস্টাল বেল্টে গেছি বহুবার, যে কেন টেকনোলজি আমরা চেঞ্জ করি না। একটা টেকনোলজি কাজ করছে না, আবার সেইটাই বানাচ্ছি। সো আমি বসলে অনেক উদাহরণ দিতে পারে। মজার জিনিস হচ্ছে, পরিবেশ মন্ত্রণালয় টেকনোলজি নিডস অ্যাসেসমেন্ট নামে একটা রিপোর্ট তৈরি করেছে। আমাদের কোথায় কোথায় টেকনোলজি দরকার, বোধহয় এখন ওই রিপোর্টটা খুঁজতে হবে, তারপরে টেকনোলজি খুঁজতে হবে। বাংলাদেশে একটা মজার জিনিস হচ্ছে, যে কোনো টপিকে উই হ্যাভ এ রিপোর্ট। এই রিপোর্টটা তৈরি করা হয়েছে কিন্তু দাতা দেশের ইনস্ট্রাকশন অনুযায়ী, তোমাদের এটা দরকার। ওরা ওদের বিশেষজ্ঞনে তৈরি করে দেয়, আমাদের শেলফে ওটা ধুলা খায়। সেটার জন্য আমার লাস্ট সেন্টেন্সটা হচ্ছে, কানকুন এগ্রিমেন্টে 2010-এ পরিষ্কার লেখা আছে, all your steps and actions and decisions must be country driven. যতদিন না কান্ট্রি ড্রিভেন হবে, ততদিন কিচ্ছু হবে না। থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ।
Thank you. We'll go back to the session now. Can I just ask our next speaker is Mr. Mohammad Ziaul Haq, Director, Department of Environment. He's been with the Environment Department for many decades now, right?
More than 29 years.
More than 29 years. And I think I met you at that time. Again, 5 minutes.
Yes. এখন আমি কি বাংলায় না ইংলিশে বলবো?
If you give permission, you
I can leave, then you can speak in Bangla. No problem. No, please wait.
don't have to leave.
Well, we'll continue to, we'll continue to speak in English. We'll continue. Please wait. Yeah, thank you, respected Khushi Appa, and we are very happy to have Honorable Advisor to the Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Minister of Water Resources. I fully endorse all the comments already made by the distinguished panelists, including Dr. Ainun Nishad and my colleagues from German Cooperation Agency. Actually, we are trying to see how we can align our national perspectives with the international and global perspective. And we have been working, we have been talking about at UNFCCC level, basically on global issues, the global agenda surrounding the global discourse. But now it is high time to integrate this global agenda with our national agenda. And I will just touch upon 3 areas where we can very efficiently align our national issues with the global issues. As we already heard about the key agenda items that will be discussed under COP30, one is the global goal and adaptation. So now the global community is trying hard to fix the global goal and adaptation and corresponding global targets and to assess the global targets, the implementation progress, the indicators. So by this time, now the global community has come up with a few hundreds indicators to see the progress of global targets and global goals in the future. So now, since we have the National Adaptation Plan from 2023 to 2050, so this is the time to look back our NAP and how we can actually align the global goal. We can align our NAP with the upcoming global goal, global target, and global indicators that will be adopted, hopefully adopted by COP30. We are not sure whether we will be able to adopt by 195 countries in consensus by COP30 this November, but the community, the global community is working very hard. Over the last 3 years, they have been discussing very rigorous, very religiously to have consensus on global goal and adaptation. The second point is about the loss and damage. The loss and damage global fund has been established 2 years ago. Still, we are trying to access the global fund, Global Loss and Damage Fund. We call it FRLD, the fund for responding to loss and damage. So this is time, and we are trying to get access to the fund as the first recipient country, as Bangladesh. So we are trying to develop a good project proposal to submit to the Global Fund, Loss and Damage Fund, to access as one of the first recipient countries. And we have to push this for mobilization of resources and for start allocating the resources to the recipient country who are the most vulnerable and whose needs are the most in terms of responding to loss and damage. And third point, I would like to say about the climate finance. We already talked about last COP, the global community in consensus by 195 countries decided to mobilize 300 billion per year from 2026, from this next year. So every year 300 billion. So this is the challenge for the global community, particularly the developed countries, to jointly, collectively mobilize the 300 billion from 2026 and onward every year. And we are hoping that being one of the most climate vulnerable countries, we deserve the priority in terms of providing fund to Bangladesh to address adaptation, loss and damage, and other related issues. And at the same time, this COP, there will be a huge discussion around mobilizing 1.3 trillion US dollar by 2035. And how this pathway, the roadmap could look like. So this COP will decide how to go about this $1.3 trillion by 2035. And in the last COP, decision was contribution by all parties. So it is not only the developed country, those countries who are capable of providing finance to poor developing countries, who are willing to do so and are capable of providing money to the poor developing country. All contributions will be aligned to mobilize 1.3 trillion US dollar. And finally, on mitigation, on global emission reduction. Actually, this is the fundamental, this is the root cause of global climate change. If we want to address the global climate change, we have to collectively reduce the global emission, as IPCC talks about. It is about 43% emission reduction by 2030 relative to 2019 emission level. 60% by 2035 at global scale reduction compared to 2019 emission level. And we have to implement our NDC in totality. And as of now, if you consider the NDC, this is basically focused on mitigation. Only 67 countries have submitted the NDC as of now. It is supposed to be submitted by 10th February this year. Only 67 countries. If you consider the contribution of global emission, only 20 countries, G20, is responsible for more than 80% of the global emission. Just 20 countries, G20. So if you want to address the global emission, global climate change, emission reduction, actually we are looking at only the 20 countries who can contribute more than 80% of the global emission. But surprisingly, and it is regrettable that out of these 20 countries, only 7 countries have submitted their NDC. Bangladesh has submitted the NDC with ambitious target, conditional and unconditional, and over the years, our emission has been increased. In 2013, our emission was around 172 million. Now it is almost 252 million. And in the presentation, I see some figures which is not aligned with our NDC. So whatever we will put forward the information, please try to provide the official information, which is NDC 3. So you will just look at the NDC 3. It is very comprehensive, and we are trying to capture other issues: the adaptation, just transition, then youth, the equity, justice for youth, disabled, and gender issues, and other related issues. In terms of what Anunisa sir has said, if you want to achieve the SDG, we have to pursue for greening the economy. If you want to achieve the low carbon development pathway together with the climate resilient development, we have to green our economy. Otherwise, ultimately, there will be no sustainability of our development, prosperity, if you don't consider the low carbon development in our general development aspirations. So this is my humble submission, and we are very looking forward to having the very insights and the guiding message from our honorable advisor later on. So thank you very much for giving me the time, and congratulations to the CPD for organizing this series of discussions around all issues related to climate change, not only mitigation, but other all issues. Thank you very much for organizing this.
Thank you. Now we would like to ask Mr. Mohammad Sohail from Director BGMEA, and then we will go to our last speaker before giving it to the advisor.
Thank you, Moderator Khushiappa, Honorable Advisor, and distinguished panelists, learned panelists. Actually, I am learning here a lot. I can just express here what the RMG is doing at this moment. We have lots of program having with like our partner countries like Switzerland, German, GIZ, Swiss Code with a different project. We have some targets for 2030, that is 30% GHG reductions, 20% renewable energy in the RMJ sector, and 50% enhanced circularity by 2030. We already in the process of sustainability and renewable energy, we are running on. You know, we have at this moment Green Factory 268. So we already reporting our carbon emissions to the UN. So there almost good practice factories, those who are strong in financing, like 500, 600 factories. But in our case, to cope up with this climate change and our business, its challenge is small factories. So I recommended here a few things. We have to more investment in academia, in innovations. Already BGME started our, we have innovation center. So we are in a process of actually basically data setup and how can we improve our technology as well as environmental and climate change. So we are working on that part. So from government side, here, honorable advisor here, if we have invested on, innovation in technologies and research, that will make me benefit in that way. We can maybe invented some solar panel which I can use in the small areas of land. Like there is in one area, 10 factories having a rooftop of 5,000 square feet area. So we can clustering these 10 factories, getting the facilities. So it needed to be innovations. There is some investment there. And our challenge to onboard these SME factories in the mainstream, as well as all the small factories in Bangladesh, rather than RMG. So these, we are in a process. What BGME is doing at this moment, we are technically auditing our factories, small factories, find out how we can improve. Even we have a project with the BRAC also to improve his position at this moment with the climate change, with the sustainability positions. So these are, we are measuring from our side, as well as I can say I have some, there's a global efficiency level. Denmark, they have almost 50%, they have their own renewable energy coming from the wind or 26. Yeah. And so these are some few examples in the world, they are achieved the point. So we also need some, Ainul sir is telling, our internal communication, we need to more better. I can express like that. 50 years before, when a road built, it will extended not less than 20 years. Now a road built with lots of engineers, lots of technologies there, it can sustain 1 year also. So that is, we have to change our mindset and working efficiency in ourselves. That is my last point. Maybe we have to change ourselves also, our mindset. We have to improve ourselves as well as we cannot go away the global countries from whom we are affected. So we have to go all the ways, all the processes in actions. We cannot sitting idle here, who give me money, who will do. What efforts from my side, I have to do that, and then we can improve this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we come to our last designated speaker, Dr. Shah Abdul Sadi, Deputy Secretary, Economic Relations Development, Government of Bangladesh.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Mrs. Khushi Kabir, and also present Honorable Advisor, Sayeda Rizwana Hassan, in fact, who has over a decade being an inspiration for me in climate practice in the government, and also in my pursuit in climate finance studies, and interestingly, whose interviews and process became document evidence in my PhD thesis. And the same applies to Professor Ainul Nishat. The same, and also the same applies to Salimul Haq Khan. Respectfully, I am recalling our climate guru, and who has been my, alumni, because we both belong to the University of Sussex. And also the excellencies and dignitaries, because I am from ERD, so I can highlight that Bangladesh belongs to, in climate negotiation in the COP, belongs to G77 and China group, in smaller groups, as Sir said. And there our position in terms of adaptation is that adaptation finances must be grants, not loans, so that we are not burdened we don't increase our debt burden. And also that adaptation finance should double, being 50-50 with mitigation, and the GGA, global adaptation goals, should be country-specific, having priority on the country's needs and its capabilities in institutions and finances and in technologies. And in loss and damage, the same happens, though you know that the basket now is $731 million only. Anyway, so the point of our G77 and China is that it should be clear, consistent, predictable, based on a mechanism of immediate disbursement. Very tricky words, all are. And the mitigation on that side, our position is kind of this, that yes, concessional loans is possible, but it has to be based on the principles of just transition. Now, I won't say that I will give you some data, but I won't say that I am demystifying the myth of climate financing. I do not subscribe to that, but many do. But my point is we can reflect on it. So UNFCCC financing mechanisms, for example, GCF, JEF, and Adaptation Fund, how much over the last 10 years we have received? You can say it is only $474.12 million. And of these, loan constitute $250 million and grants $224.12 million. And we can compare it with the climate financing for Sustainable Development Report, 8th report of the Finance Division of the Government of Bangladesh, that we have 46 NAP projects for adaptation that mobilized $1.6 billion equivalent BDT, and this fiscal year we have allocated $343.33 million this fiscal year. And in the NDC projects, we have 20 projects running, and that mobilized $4.08 billion. And this fiscal year, we allocated $892.35 million. So this gives a kind of food for thought to reflect on the country's role in it. So I'm moving, how can we navigate then the global priorities and approaches? So my understanding is that by better internal preparedness, that we can navigate the external finance and whatever it is, everything. As Sir said, I know Nishat Sir says that amader korte hobe. We have to do, we have to act. As BZMA discussion said, we have to act. Now, how we can act? I have framed it in a way that we can act by aligning, and we can act by reframing our thought. Then how can we align? We align our line ministries and departments with the NAP targets. I mean, 8 sectors, 4 cross-cutting sectors, and 113 interventions. So for example, agriculture, so they can align themselves by integrating those actions with their fiscal processes and planning. And the same applies to the other line ministries and departments. So to that end, what we have done, we have established Bangladesh Climate Development Partnership to, in a principle of whole of government by bringing in the public sector actors, the private sector actors, that include the industry, I mean BGMA kind, and that includes the CSO, and that includes the academia. And this board is headed by the principal secretary to the honorable chief advisor. It means that it's a super ministerial body. And it works through 4 working groups. And I am here on behalf of the working group 2, headed by the secretary ERD. And we have also established International Climate Finance Cell that provides the secretarial support. And it's also based on the same principle of inclusivity and designing projects. And perhaps my time is over almost, so I'm finishing. And how can we reframe? So I think we can later on work together and learn more about that. Now, how we can reframe it? We can, I think, elevate the narrative of vulnerability. Instead of elevating the narrative of vulnerability, we can move on by elevating the narrative of opportunity so that we can unlock the public finance as well as the private finance by leveraging market-based financial instruments, for example, equity, guarantee, bonds, so that we can minimize the increasing climate finance gap. So this is from my part, and we are working together. You'll be happy to know that in the ICFC in ERD, we are working with the, for example, ADB is here, I should mention, that who are helping us with operationalizing the BCDP and the working groups. And we are also, as Ainun Nishat sir mentioned, that we provided a training for the government, academia, and the private sector on the market-based financing instruments. How can it be, they can be leveraged to mobilize private sector finances. And another point is, for example, how we can achieve synergy and improve coherence. So we are working together with the Department of Livestock and formed a multidisciplinary team to design a project for climate resilient livestock management for GCF. And as you all know, that designing a climate project is pretty different from designing a traditional development project. I mean, I'm referring to the UNFCCC financing windows that is really knowledge intensive and may sometimes demotivate who seek that. So with these words, and we are working together to minimize climate finance gaps, and also, again, it is intimidating to say something before my climate gurus, who do not know, silently, Sayyidah Rizwana Hassan, when I was fighting against polythene 10 micron below, and fight still goes on, and improvement happened in that line, and Professor Ainun Nishat sir as well. And I'm very thankful to be here, thanking CPD, who has long been a source of data, information, guidelines, and policy support for the government and for the learners like me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. একসাথে যদি ওপেন থাকতে পারে সরকার আর যারা practitioners, এটাতে we can achieve a lot. We can do much more than working in silos. So I would like to ask your indulgence. I would like to hear our chief guest speak, and then I would like to open the floor for discussions for a very specific reason is because I won't be able to stay for too long. So I would just beg your indulgence and ask Fahmida to take over after Rizwana Hassan has spoken, and then do the question-answer session. Since we started a little late, we can end a little late. I would like to ask our chief guest, Advocate Sayyidah Rizwana Hassan, Honorable Advisor, Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, Interim Government of Bangladesh. Rizwana, shobai jeta jane, as everyone knows, has been a tireless, not only just an advocate, she's been in the field, in the struggle, in the fight for environmental justice and climate change. So, Rizwana Hassan, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll speak in both languages, English and Bengali, and the Bangla part, if the German friend has difficulty to understand, I think he has got a capable translator who can translate the essence of it. although finding essence in climate talk is very difficult. We are talking about a problem that we need to address with external support as well as by revisiting and amending our policies and practices. Now, supposedly, the amount of money that you need for adaptation purposes never comes to you. What do? You have to protect your interest, your territory, your economic activities, your health, your well-being. So every time I go to COP, it was not me, but rather the previous ministers. Every time they went to COP, on their return, one common question was always asked by the journalists. So how much money have you got? I mean, not this directly, but what has been the commitment? And the helpless minister had to say that we have got a commitment of 100 billion by 2020. And we were all happy writing, we will be getting 100 billion by 2020 as climate support. And that never materialized. On climate, we have seen how double counting was a practice. We have seen double counting in financial support. We have also seen double counting in mitigation efforts. And these are all recorded facts. And these are also recorded in the UNFCCC documents itself. So nobody can say that there was no, how do you say, I have to find a diplomatically correct word. I mean that nobody actually did double counting. There are countries, there are entities, there are governments who went into this practice of double counting, as a result of which, even today, except some countries, the emission is going up and the total emission is actually on a rise and not on a decline. Now, if that continues to be the case, then will technology solve the problem? If the ones who are holding technologies are not managing to reduce their emission, getting technology from them on carbon reduction will or may not be that helpful for us. Now I'm very happy that our NDC has been submitted, and this time I haven't heard complaints from anyone that it has not reflected this, it is lacking in this aspect. This time everybody participated, and it's not Bangladesh's NDC, it's NDC that is owned by all of us. Now after that the NDC was finalized and after it was submitted, I've requested my Department of Environment colleagues to come up with a work plan, because in an NDC, Department of Environment will not reduce emission. Some other agency will. The energy sector will have to reduce. The road transportation sector will have to reduce. The agriculture sector will have to reduce. So I've told them to prepare a work plan as to how we are going to fulfill our commitment under NDC. And my colleague whom I have given this instruction is not seeing me after that, because it's actually a very elaborate work. You can always say that we will emit 5% in this sector, but how will you reduce 5% in this sector? But how will you do the reduction? What's the timeline? What are the specific steps that you will take? That I hope before I leave I'll be able to present a work plan before all of you. The second good news is in the area of early warning. The UK Met Office on our request has agreed to work with Bangladesh Water Development Board and give them access to their real-time data, something that we miss and we get suddenly flooded. So once we get access to the real-time data of the UK Met Office, how to translate those before the disaster happens is also something they're going to learn. And it's really somewhat difficult for me to appreciate that how can a country like Bangladesh, who is facing water-related disasters so frequently, still hasn't developed its own mechanism for real-time data collection. I mean, how can we continue blaming you for not giving us the data? Well, it's of course an essential part of the internationally recognized good neighborhood principle. But since that hasn't happened, we should have developed our capacity. And as part of that effort, we have talked to the UK Met Office, and they very promptly agreed to it and has signed an MOU, and we probably will launch that program officially tomorrow. The third good news is the Bangladesh Climate Development Partnership, where we have got 4 working groups, and I have told the respective heads of the 4 working groups to include CSOs and academia in all the working groups, so that when the government is too busy following the process, the civil society members and the academia will be able to help the government with substance, points, and ideas. That will also be done soon, and we actually have officially launched the BCDP, and we had the first board meeting held last month. And we are going to have the second board meeting in December. When we talk about mitigation, of course it is not, or it should not have, I mean, it's not legally binding on us, but it is morally imperative. You cannot have a meeting at 1 p.m. with all these lights on and the air conditioner on when it's raining outside and there is so much of sunlight. So it's not only what you produce, how much you produce, it's also how you consume. Your consumption pattern will also have to be questioned. The Department of Environment is being assisted by the World Bank to build several offices in different parts of Bangladesh. So when I told the Department of Environment that let us build green complexes, so nobody in Bangladesh, other than the garment sector, knows about the standards of green building. So we are now having a meeting with architects, engineers, so that we can prepare a model of green building, and Raju can tell its clients to not to go for energy intensive buildings, but to go for buildings that will be less energy demanding. What brick do you use? We don't want brick kilns to exist in Bangladesh, but we all want to build our houses with bricks. Now, how do I solve that problem? One has to think about alternative, and hardly in any country of the world, except India, Philippines, they still produce burnt brick. In the process of producing burnt brick, which is a major source of carbon in this country, you are not only polluting the air, you're also destroying your agricultural land. And the hills are being raised. You know why? Because the soil goes to the brick manufacturing unit. On the other hand, we do river dredging. We don't know what to do with the dredged material, so we do the dredging on one side, put the soil on the other side, and the soil again gets washed into the river. Now, when I was an activist, I was very critical of this thing, but now when I look for places where I can deposit this dredged material, I don't find places. So this is a practical problem. So we can supply part of it to the brick manufacturers so that we don't have to compromise with our hills and our agricultural land. So a lot needs to be done in the country itself to change habits that are destructive to the climate system, at the same time to ensure that by changing our consumption pattern, we already start doing our mitigation. We have to think of coastal afforestation, because if we don't get the money for building the huge protective structures from the developed countries, do we just sit like this, sit idle? No, we have to go for coastal afforestation. This time, in Khulla, in two areas, there's no water in the dry season. So proposal came to ECNEC for approving around 70 deep tube wells to extract groundwater. So that is not a solution. It is aggravating the problem. So this time we are trying to have a rainwater harvesting scheme that will be run by the government. So when we think about development, there has to be paradigm shift. Hopefully the project gets through from ECNEC, and we will also reach out to some of our development partners to see if they can help us with financial support and technological support to have a rainwater harvesting system of a scale. Desalination is an issue, and it is becoming more and more complex an issue, not only in the Satkhira district, but also in districts like Feni. We need technological support there, or we need to develop our own technology, low-cost ones, and we need to institutionalize those practices. এটা আমাদেরকে করতেই হবে। আমাদের পাবলিক ট্রান্সপোর্টেশন লাগবে তো। এখন বায়ু দূষণ কমাতে, to address air pollution, I mean to just reduce the pollution and bring it to a tolerable level, you need 3 to 4 years. But to improve your quality, you need more years. For that, you need to change your petroleum standard. You need to totally redo your refineries. Those are time-consuming and expensive things. But when I wanted to go hard on the polluting cars, now that you have heard me, when you go, wherever you go from here, you will see all the buses that are plying on the roads are old buses. All the buses. How many can you stop? All of them are old. So a public transportation kothata bhabte hobe. Germany actually has a very good model of not only generation of renewable energy, but distribution of renewable energy. Consumers have many choices, and they choose their supplier based on how clean that renewable is. তো আমরা এখনো 5% কি ক্রস করতে পারি নাই, কিন্তু this government has been very pragmatic in the sense that it has not only said 30%, it has also said that the journey will begin with the government agencies. All government agencies in next 2 to 3 years will have their own renewable energy generation system. আমরা যদি মিটিগেশনের কথা আসলে আমাদেরকে বলতেই থাকতে হবে, আপনি কত অ্যাডাপ্ট করবেন? আপনার 1/3 দেশ যদি ডুবে যায় পানির নিচে, বাকি 2/3 আপনি কতটুকু অ্যাডাপ্ট করতে পারবেন? সো মানি ইজ নিডেড, বাট মানি মে নট বি দ্য অনলি সলিউশন। আমাদেরকে আমাদের পুরো ডেভেলপমেন্ট প্যাটার্নটাকেই চিন্তা করতে হবে। এটা রাতারাতি বদলে ফেলার বিষয় না, কিন্তু আজকে থেকে যাত্রা শুরু করলে 10-12 বছর পরে আমরা একটা জায়গায় পৌঁছাবো যেখানে আমরা ডিস্ট্রাকটিভ থাকবো না। আমি নিশাদ ভাইয়ের কাছে যে প্রশ্নটার উত্তর চাচ্ছিলাম সেটা হচ্ছে ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ এনভায়রনমেন্টের এন্ট্রেন্সে কোন টেকনোলজিটা সাজিয়ে রাখা হচ্ছে, যেটা রেপ্লিকেটেড হচ্ছে না। আসলে ওটা আমার মনে পড়তেছে না, তবে এটাও ঠিক, মানে সরকারের হয় কি, আমাদের ধরেন 400 কোটি টাকা থাকে ইমার্জেন্সির জন্য, কারণ নদী কখন কোন দিকে ভাঙবে তো বুঝতে পারে না। তো এই 400 কোটি টাকা দিয়ে বালুর বস্তা ফেলে ফেলে দেয়। এবার আমরা একটা কাজ করেছি যে প্রত্যেকটা জায়গায় যেখানে বালুর বস্তা ফেলেছে প্রায় প্রতিটা জায়গায় স্থানীয় একজন লোককে দিয়ে দিয়েছি, এবং স্থানীয় মানুষেরা নিজেরা ওজনের মেশিন নিয়ে গেছে যে বালুর বস্তায় আসলে ওই পরিমাণ বালু আছে কিনা। আমি আমার ওয়াটার ডেভেলপমেন্ট বোর্ডে, যেটার সাথে নিশাদ ভাইরা অনেকদিন জড়িত ছিলেন, সেখানে আমি এমন কোনো রিটার্ন প্রপোজাল বা কিছু দেখি নাই যে বালুর বস্তা না ফেলে আরেকটু কস্ট এফেক্টিভ ওয়েতে আরেকটু এফিশিয়েন্ট ওয়েতে কিভাবে করা যায়। আমি কথা বলেছি, এমনকি নৌবাহিনীর সাথেও কথা বলেছি। যদি আপনাদের কাছে কোনো সাজেশন থাকে যে প্রতি বছরই 400 কোটি বালুর বস্তা না ফেলে ওটাকে একটু বাজেট বাড়িয়ে 550 বা 600 কোটিতে করলে আরেকটু টেকসই করা যায়, তাহলে আমাকে একটু জানালে আমি খুবই বাধিত হব। লাস্ট কথাটা একটু বলি, আমি ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জে COP কনফারেন্সে ওখানে যাওয়াটা খুব জরুরি, টু এঙ্গেজ, ওই নেটওয়ার্কটা থাকা দরকার। কিন্তু প্রতিবারই যখন যাই একটা করে নতুন শব্দ ধরায় দেয়, ওই নতুন শব্দ ওইটার আবার ব্যাখ্যা বাইর করতে হয়, ওইটার আবার গ্রহণযোগ্য ডেফিনেশন বাইর করতে হয়। তো ক্লাইমেট ফিন্যান্সের ডেফিনেশন কি তর্ক করতে করতে বললেন না তাহলে এরকম করে আসতে পারবে না। তার আগের বছর শিখাইলো NCQG, প্রতি বছর একটা না একটা কিছু শিখিয়ে দেয় আমাদেরকে, আমরা ব্যস্ত থাকি ওইটার ব্যাখ্যা নিয়ে, কিন্তু কাজের কাজ যেটা হয় সেটা অনেক সময় আমাদের হচ্ছে না। তো আমাদেরকে অ্যাডাপ্টেশন করতে হবে, শুধু সেটা না, আমাদের নিজেদের প্রাণ প্রকৃতি বাঁচাইতেও আমাদের প্যারাডাইম শিফটের দরকার, যেটা গিয়ে ইভেনচুয়ালি আমাদেরকে অ্যাডাপ্টেশনে সাহায্য করবে। আরেকটা কথা হচ্ছে, আমাদের পানি সেক্টরে কেউ পিএনজি না, ফরেস্ট সেক্টরে কেউ পিএনজি না, তবে নেতৃত্বেরও বদল হওয়া দরকার। যদি জাতীয় পর্যায়ে আমরা বলতে পারি যে একজন দুইবারের বেশি প্রধানমন্ত্রী হইতে পারবে না, তাহলে এই সমস্ত বোর্ড, এই সমস্ত কমিটি, কাউন্সিলেও আমাদের নতুন করে জায়গা করে দিতে হবে। তো আপনাদেরকে এই কথাগুলো বলে ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি। আর আমরাও কিন্তু আমাদের ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ ট্রাস্ট ফান্ডে যখন টাকা দিই, অল্পই টাকা, অ্যাডাপ্টেশনে কতটুকুন দিব, মিটিগেশনে কতটুকুন দিব, আমাদের নিজেদেরই কিন্তু ভাগ নাই। আর খালি দেখি যে সরকারি অফিস সোলার করবে সে ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ প্রকল্পে একটা টাকা চেয়ে রাখে। এবার বলছি এগুলো হবে না, আর এখন পানির সাপ্লাই এগুলো বাড়াইতে হবে। তো আমাদের ইউ মোস্ট ওয়েলকাম টু গিভ মি ইউর সাজেশন যে কোন কোন প্র্যাকটিসগুলো করলে আমরা আগাতে পারি। কতগুলোর উদাহরণ তো আমিই দিলাম, যেমন গ্রিন বিল্ডিংয়ের আমরা একটা মডেল করব, সরকারি অফিসগুলো আমরা রিনিউয়েবল করব, কিন্তু আর কি করা যায় যেটা আমাদের নিজেদের সামর্থ্যের মধ্যে, আমাকে যদি একটু লিখিত জানান, হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে জানান, আমি বাধিত হব। ধন্যবাদ।
ধন্যবাদ। Thank you, Rizwana Hassan. And I think the main thing that we take back is that there has to be more dialogue and understanding and for everything. I would like to ask, think that then this is going to be going on for a week. There would have been question and answers. Can we then do it after lunch? So everybody is invited for lunch at one floor below. It's just Aktala Niche. Everybody is invited for lunch. And so if you don't mind, আমরা question answer পরে এক সময় যে কোনো একটা ফাঁকে বের করে নিতে পারবো। Thank you very much all the panelists, প্রত্যেককেই ধন্যবাদ। Thank you chief guests for coming and listening to most of the time. Have a good day and a good week.